Good morning, everyone. I'm attorney Catherine Henry, the founder of the Restore Freedom Initiative. Looks like I had a little bit of technical difficulty getting started there, but okay, we're good. All right, so good morning, everyone. I'm attorney Catherine Henry, and I'm the founder of the Restore Freedom Initiative. This morning, I guess it's still morning. This morning, I just wanted to share with you some thoughts about the bigger conversation that we'll have at the end of the week, which I guess would be tomorrow, Saturday, or Sunday. But this is just the short video to kind of give you some information about property rights and how our executive orders are impacting those property rights. So what kind of property rights? Well, let's think about this in terms of a few things. One, you have the contact tracing Executive Order 166 that requires the 14 days of, well, it strongly suggests the 14 days of quarantine after you've encountered anyone that has even one symptom of COVID-19. So there's some significant property rights that would be implicated if you have to have a 14-day quarantine. But this executive order also claims to prohibit employers from punishing an employee who chooses to stay home because they came in contact with somebody who had a headache or a fever or any of the main symptoms of COVID-19. So that, of course, drastically impacts your ability to, your property rights. Because if you're a business owner, let's say you're a small business owner and you have 5 employees, and one of those employees, in theory, then does 20% of the work for that company, and the employer is supposed to, under this executive order, not be able to do anything about the fact that an employee might exercise like a Family Medical Leave Act type of time because they simply came into contact with someone who has a headache or one of the other symptoms of COVID-19. For those of you who've only ever worked in the big corporate world or in government, or perhaps not really ever worked in the private sector at all, that's a huge thing. When you have a small business owner who is, maybe has 1 employee or 2 or 5, even somebody who has 25 employees, they're going to be hit hard if they are supposed to just dole out this leave time for anyone who literally is not sick themselves, but who has merely come into contact with someone who might be sick, not even a confirmed case of COVID-19. So you also have the deprivation of property rights in terms of the executive orders that have been issued to prohibit the travel to a second home. That's not a thing right now, but it was one that was issued, I believe, at the request of State Rep Jack O'Malley, because people in the UP in the northern part of the Lower Peninsula did not, supposedly, want anyone from the southern part of the state to bring COVID-19 back up north. Of course, their irrational fears never get to trump the property rights of the other people that are being impacted by such restrictions. But that's one of the considerations involved. Like I said, owning or operating a business. We have, in general, the idea of owning or operating a business. Maybe it's a business that now you're stuck in a rock and a hard place because you are told you have to require masks to be used and temperature checks and the contact tracing questions of your clients or customers. And in doing so, you're opening yourself up to lawsuit because you're violating those privacy rights and whatnot of the people that you serve. But so you're going to lose people because you're trying to enforce those executive orders. But on the flip side to that, if you don't enforce them, then they're threatening you with taking away your licenses summarily without any hearing, and you can later on appeal it, but they say that's to that administrative agency. So a lot of implications for owning and operating a business. If you own a gym or you own a movie theater or something like that, you're definitely being, your property rights are definitely being harmed right now by these executive orders. Earning wages, that's a property, an element of property rights. If you earn wages, and then we have all these goofy executive orders and programs that have been out there to have like quasi-unemployment status, job share programs, all of it. It's messing around with individuals' ability to have wages that are earned according to the contract which they established when they started employment at that place of business. Property maintenance was also a huge one that I believe to a large extent has been sorted out now, but when the governor issued the executive orders saying you couldn't buy essential items and stores had to rope off their areas that had paint or building supplies or a number of things, of course, those restrictions created huge impediments for people who needed to keep up on property. So if you're a landlord and you have somebody renting, a house from you, and you have the obligation to go and repair that property, but the governor issues an order saying you can't buy the items needed to repair the property, that's a problem. Because that's directly impacting your ability to maintain that property, and therefore it is directly impairing your ability to uphold your end of the bargain or your terms of the contract that you have with people. Same thing holds true with, just think of the simple and easiest examples of lawn maintenance companies who were supposed to be out starting to get lawns ready in late spring, or I guess early spring, whatever. That lawn maintenance companies were told they couldn't mow lawns and they couldn't, trim trees and trim bushes and, do whatever kind of landscaping things that they were supposed to do. Most of them already had contracts established. So we have a very obvious and direct way that these executive orders have impaired contracts in that sense as well. With that being said, I wanted to point you to some important provisions of our U.S. and state constitutions. I've actually copied and pasted those relevant provisions right in the description of this Facebook Live video. But let's go over some of them. Our U.S. Constitution, the Fifth Amendment, says that no one shall, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Likewise, our state constitution, Article 10, Section 2, says that private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation, therefore being first made or secured in a manner prescribed by law. So you can't just take somebody's property and then figure out compensation later. That's not how it works. The reason why I bring up these two clauses is because, to a large extent, what the governor is essentially saying is businesses in these categories, you are required to stop all business function whatsoever. We are going to, in a sense, take your property and not allow you to utilize it because this is supposedly for public use, for the public good. And so there's actually provisions right in our state constitution that do talk about takings for blight, condemnation proceedings, and the burden of proof that the government has to meet in order to be able to take your property. Of course, none of that was ever even attempted in a court of law before the governor just started issuing these executive orders stopping people from the ability to utilize their own property and thus taking their property. Our U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, says that no state shall pass any law impairing the obligation of contracts. And our state constitution, Article 1, Section 10, says that no law impairing the obligation of contract shall be enacted. No law impairing the obligation of contract shall be enacted. So again, the US and the state constitution are very clear. The government cannot create any kind of law or executive order or anything acting or looking like a law that's going to impair contracts, period. It's in there. It's been in there for a long time. So any kind of executive order that's been coming out that's going to stop those individuals from keeping up with the terms of their contracts, whether you're a landlord, whether you have a lawn mowing service, whether you're a gym that has gym subscriptions or monthly membership fees, or any of those things, restaurants that have ongoing contracts for certain goods coming in, those kinds of things. Any of that, those are all examples of contracts where there are obligations for both parties. And when an executive order is shutting down those businesses or limiting the amount of people that can be utilizing those businesses, that is a law or a government act impairing the obligation of contracts. Clearly unconstitutional. U.S. Constitution Amendment 5 and Amendment 14. No one shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. Also, our state constitution, Article 1, Section 17, that says that, quote, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So, what due process has been afforded to the business owners who are being threatened to have their licenses taken away because they don't require masks for their customers? What due process was afforded to Carl the barber when he opened while the executive order claimed that he could not be open? Not only is there not due process, there literally isn't a process being followed at all. We have a constitutional process for how laws get enacted, the time period a governor has to wait before enforcing them, the manner in which they need to be crafted or drafted, what kinds of things have to be in there, or what kinds of things cannot be in there. When we have laws that are issued on more than one subject, that doesn't follow the process of law because the Constitution says only one subject per law. If we're changing or modifying any kind of law, the Constitution, Article 4 of our state constitution, requires that you have to reprint the entire law so people could see the parts that are changing and not just see it in a little vacuum. You have to give it context. We also talked about just a moment ago about the waiting period for enforcing those. The fact that all laws or all legislation has to be introduced by a bill in the legislature, not by executive order. That's Article 4 of our state constitution. There's a wide variety of all different types of requirements that are not negotiable. They are required in our state constitution, and no law can ever be issued or enacted or enforced if it doesn't follow those proper procedures. So definitely life, liberty, and property have been over and over again deprived without due process of law. Article 1, Section 17 also says that the right of all individuals, firms, corporations, and voluntary associations to fair and just treatment in the course of legislative or executive investigations and hearings shall not be infringed. What kind of fair and just treatment are people like Carl the barber getting? There's not even really so much an investigation. It's just, nope, you are open, you're violating this unconstitutional executive order. We are going to go ahead and take your license or shut you down or threaten you with misdemeanor jail time or civil fines and criminal penalties. And that's just okay. No, it's not okay. Our state constitution, Article 1, Section 17, says that all individuals, firms, and corporations and voluntary associations are entitled to fair and just treatment in the course of legislative and executive investigations and hearings. Period. Let's see. The U.S. Constitution. Oh, by the way, I should say that on that last point, the emergency orders that have been coming out from the director of the Department of Health and Human Services specifically say you don't get to go to court to even argue about why they're taking away your license. You have to go through his prescribed little, what is it? Anyway, I have a note somewhere else on it. I mentioned it last night. But essentially the administrative world. You can appeal those decisions to this administrative agency. It doesn't say you have the right to go to a court of law and have the actual people invested with that constitutional authority to decide matters of controversy. That would be the judiciary. It doesn't allow for that. It's attempting to require you to, keep your controversy appeal within the executive branch. So, not acceptable. So our 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says that the power is not delegated to the U.S. by the Constitution, nor prohibited to it by the states, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So keeping that in mind, then if you also look at the 9th Amendment, the enumeration in this Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. The people. So we have rights that are not enumerated that we get to keep. We also have power that is not specifically given to the U.S. government and not prohibited to the states. That power, remaining power that's not identified, is shared between us and our state. Of course, that's where our state constitution also comes into play. So, and on that point, our state constitution, Article 1, Section 23, also says that the enumeration in this constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So, no matter what, we have all these rights. There's all these restrictions placed on our government. And if you're still out there wondering if these executive orders are legal or constitutional, I'm going to point you to, I didn't put this in there. Article 6 of our U.S. Constitution. So, a couple of important things here. Number one, this is addressing the relationship between executive orders and laws with our state constitution and our U.S. Constitution. So if we have, on the one hand, an act of the government, let's say executive order, and on the other hand, we have the U.S. Constitution. Can the executive order change or modify something that's in the Constitution? That's one of the questions we're answering here. Can the legislature, in enacting laws, like the Emergency Management Act of 1976, for example, there's a whole bunch of takings clauses in there, and the forced cooperation or services to be provided by people of the state of Michigan to go along with whatever the governor has deemed necessary or appropriate to combat whatever the crisis is. That's not constitutional, but that's in the law. So does that law, can the legislature make a law that is changing or modifying the rights or obligations in the U.S. or state constitution? That's what we're talking about. So with that in mind, Article 6 of our state constitution, of our U.S. Constitution says that the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, and the laws of the United States that comply with the U.S. Constitution are the supreme law of the land, and all judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Judges do not have the option to not enforce the U.S. Constitution. when Whitmer is being taken to court over these very things, over all the stuff that we've been talking about, business owners or gyms are suing her, or hairstylists or medical providers, every single judge hearing that has a duty to enforce the terms of the U.S. Constitution. And the Constitution and laws of any state cannot supersede that. It says right in here. So anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. So if you have anything that contradicts the U.S. Constitution, that's in a state law, an executive order, a state constitution, anything in there that contradicts the U.S. Constitution is void. It's not enforceable. Also in Article 6, it says that our U.S. senators and representatives and the members of the several state legislatures, so our state reps and senators for here in Michigan, all of them, as well as all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, so judges, magistrates, attorney general, governor, state reps, senators, you name it. If you're a judicial, legislative, or executive officer in the state of Michigan or of the United States, Article 6 requires that all of those individuals, quote, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this U.S. Constitution. So that is an important thing to remember. I've often talked about Article 11, Section 1 of our state constitution that requires public officers to take an oath of office to support the Constitution in that regard. But this provision of Article 6 of our U.S. Constitution also requires the same thing. So, with all that being said, I'm just trying to hammer home the point that none of these executive orders are constitutional. Now, I say none of them. She's issued, last I looked, it was 167, I believe. And I want to say 8 of them might be constitutional. They might be legal because those did not deal with coronavirus at all. They dealt with simply the reorganization of a part of the executive branch, period. And she also submitted those to the legislature for their determination under Article 5, Section 2 of our state constitution if they wanted to essentially disapprove of those changes. But for those 6 or 8 executive orders, all of the other ones, so roughly 160 executive orders so far this year in the state of Michigan, are unconstitutional. Right from the first word, they're unconstitutional. I've talked about it from a variety of aspects, but today I was focusing on the element of property rights. So hopefully that'll get you to understand things a little bit more. So please do take a look at the provisions that I pasted right into the description of this video and read through them. The links to the state constitution and the U.S. Constitution are right on our website, restorefreedomkh.com. You can still go to restorefreedommi.com, but it'll redirect you to restorefreedomkh.com. And you'll be able to see I think it's the resources tab and documents, and you'll be able to see those there. Also, I would encourage you to pick up a paper copy, especially of the U.S. Constitution, that you can just carry around with you wherever you go, because it's good for you to know your rights. I mean, it might seem silly, but these days, things are scary. So know your rights. I will come back tomorrow or later this weekend with some more additional things. Real quick, I will see if there's any questions. Yes, you can absolutely write the justices of the Michigan Supreme Court. Definitely write them, send it off to the Supreme Court clerk, and let them know exactly what your thoughts are. write them about these constitutional provisions and remind them of their oath of office that is both required by the U.S. and state constitution. Let's see. Someone is talking about the 1945 law. She can't use it indefinitely. No, she apparently, according to the Court of Claims judge, she can. She can't because you have to read both laws together. But the comment also says the Court of Claims has until August 21st to make a decision. No, the Court of Claims already ruled. That was Judge Cynthia Stevens. It is now in the hands of the Court of Appeals, and they have that deadline. And then whoever loses on appeal at the Court of Appeals has the right to appeal, but that's not guaranteed that the court would even take it. The Supreme Court could decide they're not going to hear the appeal at that point, but I would think they are going to. So again, it looks like somebody was asking, how do I get a copy of the Michigan Constitution? If you go to any number of local fairs or, stop and see your state rep or senator during coffee hours that they have in the district, a lot of the state reps and senators hand out the Constitution. In fact, the one that I have is, it was from my prior state rep when I lived in the 86th district, Lisa Lyons. So, of course, there are changes since then. So I went off and I printed the amendments that happened in 2018. But if you're looking for one cohesive PDF that has all of the current provisions of the state constitution, that is available on the legislature's website. If you go to Google for Michigan Legislature, when you pull up that, it'll be on the left-hand side, about halfway down. You'll see Michigan Constitution as an option. Otherwise, if you go to restorefreedomkh.com, that is the website for Restore Freedom with Catherine Henry, and there's a resources or documents tab, and on there you'll find the U.S. and Michigan constitutions. So, all right, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in today. Hopefully I was able to clear up some stuff for you as an employee, as a business owner, or just as an American citizen wanting to stand up for your rights. I will be back later on to talk more about those other things, and have a wonderful afternoon.